Well, thanks for tuning in. Today you're going to see a review of this magnificent piece of work, and that may sound prideful because I made it, but I'm still allowed to appreciate it. This is a Rooster Bowie. This is custom made for someone who wanted it to these specifications. We're going to go over the whole thing. In this review, we're just going to closely go over this knife because it is such fine detail. It took so many hours to make that just cutting with it really doesn't do it justice. So this will be the detailed review, and then we're going to have another review that deals with the cutting and chopping and things like that out in the field. So stay tuned. We're going to get into some super cool aspects of this Bowie. So we'll do the sheath too, because that's kind of equally as cool. But here we go, the Rooster Bowie. So what's going on here? Well, we've got a 9.5-inch blade. It's an 8.5-inch cutting edge with a full inch choil there. That was something the customer specifically wanted. And we got a 5.5-inch handle. It's a straight coffin style handle, but with a little twist on it that we're gonna get to. So the customer wanted a Bowie knife, but a kind of a drop point Bowie knife. And I recommended he see a couple scenes from the 2010 remake of True Gritt, where Rooster has a knife very similar to this one. It's the one this was based off of. Now his knife is about 7 inches, and we made this one a lot bigger, but it's still based off of Rooster's knife, which is why it's called the Rooster. What we have here is this convex ground edge from 1095, or from 1084. This grind is incredibly sharp, even though it's such a wide blade. It's a big blade, but it's extremely sharp. I'll just show you a little bit of this here on camera. And this can be, you can do this very fine. You can do detailed cuts like that. Super sharp blade. Notice the point. We got that drop point, but still clearly a Bowie. Now that's really good because that width here makes a better slicer. The thinner you are and your edge, right? The thinner you are this ways, the less well you cut, right? Wide cuts well, thin doesn't cut quite as well. So when you have a Bowie design that's wide towards the tip, it actually cuts really well towards the tip, especially when you factor in the taper. Tapers down to a thin point, plus it's got this false grind on either side. Reduces the material back here. It's thin through here, so it's going to slice well. It's also going to penetrate really well through there. Moving through, look at that cool vine work on the back. Love that, and that goes all the way through the tang as well. I've got some buffing compound on it there. Take some of that off, it ruins the shine. There you can see, look at that. Whoa. So that's all hand done with a file. This whole thing's hand forged. It's a lot of time goes into the heat treatment. A lot of times guys have knives, they come out, they look this great, they look better than this, but their heat treat wasn't right, and no one really knows it until the knife gets a chip out of it. Or more realistically, the user doesn't really use it. He puts it in a collection. Everyone thinks it's a great knife forever, when in reality, it's incredibly flawed with a heat treat. Not so this. This is a performance heat treat. This is meant to chop and cut, and the edge won't roll. I test it by doing some fine chopping on brass just to make sure our edge doesn't roll underneath that sort of stress. And this one passed those tests, of course. So you can see that fine convex grind, that makes it very durable, but also, as you saw, a very fine. So that nice long point, or that nice long edge with the tapering point, this is going to do well with penetration, but also really well with slicing. Pretty standard Bowie design, straight edge, tapering up to a tip, and this tip is right about center line. Moving back, I like to leave these portions here unfinished just so you can kind of see that it was hand forged, and it's cool to have that two-tone look, cool to have that forged scale there. I think it just looks nice on the blade. Now notice here, this is all chamfered through here, so that's super comfortable. And you can come up there and sharpen your pencils and do whatever work you wanted to do right up there like that. Very comfortable. Moving back to our brass guard. A lot of time goes into this brass guard. Let me show you what that starts as. That just starts as something like this. A piece of brass. It needs to be cut, drilled through the middle, and then it needs to be filed, and then it needs to be filed further and further and further until you've got these nice profiles like you see here, these nice rounded edges. This is very comfortable for the hand, both this way, it's chamfered all along there as well. It's just rounded and buttery, so you can hold it any way you want and it doesn't hurt your hand. Even in reverse grip, a lot of times Bowie knives hurt reverse grip because this is digging into the meat of your hand. If you're a Bowie knife guy and you've practiced with them, you'll know what I'm talking about. This is not so. This is very comfortable reverse grip. Okay, because it's all so chamfered and because you can see it is moving outward like that. It's not just 90 degrees. Now, let me take this moment to do a comparison to a wonderful, excellent knife, Cold Steel Trailmaster. I use this knife a lot. At least I used to. It's a great knife. You can see it's, corroded from use. But let me bring your attention to this guard here. Really not articulated, not chamfered, little softened here and there. But this is just 90 degrees to the handle, and there you go. That's all you get. That's very uncomfortable when you choke up on it. Very uncomfortable when I do a reverse grip. I would not want to thrust with that because that would hurt my hand. So compare the two. The time and effort that goes into making this melt right into the handle and then just kind of slapping it on right there. It's just a 1/4 inch oval brass slapped on there, and this has much more time and effort put into it. Also, you can't hear it, this is loose. You can't see it, but when you chop with it, you can hear it buzzing. This will never come loose. This is extremely tightly soldered on there, and I've got another knife I did like this, and it's been batoned and banged around for years, and doesn't come loose. Look at how clean that is. It looks like the blade just grew out of there. That's because this hand filing was just done with immense precision. It took lots and lots of time to get it fit like that. And I'm proud of that because I don't really normally do fit and finish so well. I'm not normally a fit and finish guy, but when I'm making a knife this expensive, this big, I do put some effort into it, and it paid off, as you can see. Look at the junction here. Come back to the bolster. You can see 2 brass pins. See the 2 brass pins there? Those 2 brass pins are fixing the bolster to the tang. And of course, this butts right up against the buffalo horn. You can't feel that seam there. That is seamless. Buffalo horn pressed right up against there. Again, affixed with brass pins that help to highlight the entire thing. So lots of work put into this portion of the blade. And it makes the weight really nice too. This balances right in the choil as it should. If you've got a Bowie knife with a choil, or really any Bowie knife, it's best for it to balance about 3/4 of the way in front, 3/4 to 1 inch of the way in front of the guard, because you want a Bowie knife to be lively in the hand, and for that to be the case, you want it to be edge heavy. The Cold Steel Trailmaster also balances well. Look at that right there. About 1/4 inch in front of the blade. So no one's saying that the Trailmaster isn't made well. It's made extremely well, but it is not a custom handmade knife, and therefore there are going to be certain corners cut for economy. One of those is the time put into this. And of course here you've just got a craton handle. So yes, moving back, this is all buffalo horn. And notice the lines there, right? So it's a coffin style handle. The coffin style handle has those lines. Nothing's machined there. That is done with a file and then sandpaper, 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 sandpaper. So everything you're seeing there, that's hand done, hand filed detail. Hand filed, again, hand fit filed, whole thing hand forged. I mean, this wasn't cut out of a piece of steel. This is hammered with the hammer. This knife, that's how it starts. And it gets hammered from there, not cut out. So lots of work going into it. So check that out, full tang. Now, one of the things about a full tang knife that's coffin handle is that this is gonna have to be smaller than this, right? Because the guard has to slide over the whole thing. So in order to do that, you got a very straight handle, and that's still a traditional coffin style anyways. That doesn't look bad, but that is why it looks like this. Now, let me show you one of the little secret details. As I'm making this knife, you know, and again, I'm feeling it, I'm moving with it, I'm thrusting with it, back cut type sort of thing here. And I noticed that originally I had this straight handle completely in line with the spine. Notice, see how that handle's downward at an angle? It's offset from the edge, offset from the edge. I did that purposefully because the knife didn't flow well when it was straight. You could feel it was awkward. I'm going to demonstrate to you some of the advantages. I can think of at least 3 or 4 advantages of this offset handle. So I'm going to show you what I mean now and change the camera angle. Stay tuned. First thing to notice is how the offset angle orients it so that the center of the point is traveling through the center of the handle. If you see, there's a line that starts here and ends right there. And if you follow it straight through, that point is lined up with the axis of the handle. If this handle were straight, picture this handle straight in line with the top line here, right? If that's angled up, then this point is going to be well below the center of the knife. You don't want that. You want the center of the point running straight back pretty much to the center of your hand. So misaligning, if you will, this straight handle aligns the handle with the point so that is very natural to control and move with that point, natural to thrust with it, and also so that the most force is going through that point when you thrust. Because if your point isn't through the center of your force of thrust, it's like trying to hammer a nail that's bent. When a nail is bent, your force is going straight down, but the point of the nail's there and doesn't quite work. You want your force to be moving straight through the nail to get a good hammering. And that is one of the reasons for the angled handle. Because now, when you thrust your force straight through your hand, straight through the knife, straight out the tip. So that's the first reason why the handle is slightly offset. Another advantage of the offset handle is that this is going to align your thrusts much better. So notice how if I go for a thrust here, see how the blade is pointing straight forward, right where I want it to. Again, most force going through the blade, and there it goes for a thrust. Now, the Trillmaster, which is good, the point is right through the center of the handle, so that's right. But notice when I thrust with this, look at the angle of the blade. See how it's upwards slightly? If I want it to be straight, I gotta twist my wrist down like that. That's not where the wrist normally goes. A thrust would be something like this if you're in saber grip, or if you're in hammer grip, even this here. So that is clearly a higher angle. I can bring it down a little bit with saber grip, but it will not be as straight as this. Because again, even though my wrist is here, instead of the blade going up, the blade is going angled forward. So let me just hold them both and the same hand together, you can see that here the angle is forward, and so when I thrust, then I have this kind of awkward angle, but you can see this is pointing more towards the target. That's just going to result in a stronger, more effective thrust, right? Boom. So far then we have two advantages: lining up the point with the handle and also lining up the blade with the natural angle of the wrist with a thrust such that the blade is pointed straight into the target, transferring the most energy into the target, getting you the best penetration. The third advantage of this is with a snap cut. And snap cut, if you're a Bowie guy, you know a snap cut is one of the moves you want in your repertoire, in your toolbox. It's simply just a quick movement like this, and you're moving from your shoulder, your elbow, a little bit of wrist at the end, and it's lightning fast, but you've got this crazy fulcrum here. You're turning from here, so you've got like 10 inches of blade, and the point is the fastest moving part of the blade because it's the furthest from the pivot point, so it's covering a lot of ground super quickly. Wide point, it's gonna shear really well. This is a devastating move, okay? You can catch an opponent, right? If you're knife fighting, we're gonna say it's a fantasy world, you're knife fighting. Catch an opponent off guard with that, boy, is it going to win you the fight. Now, with a snap cut, same type of things happening. When I extend to the maximum of my body's limit here, this is a little more forward, the blade's a little more forward than something like a straight handled knife here. That forward, extra forward angle, that's more penetration into my target. So picture they both go and they both go forward like this, they both chop. Look at the Rooster Bowie, it has chopped, again, about an inch further, inch deeper into the target because that point is a little lower relative to the angle of the handle. See, handles lined up straight, handles lined up straight together, but point is forward, edge is forward. Advantage number 4 of this offset handle is for the chop. Same reason as the advantage for the snap cut, because when I go to chop, talking about wood, we're talking about whatever, when I go to chop, my blade is aggressively angled forward into the cutting material more so than if my handle were straight in line with the blade. Picture a kukri. The kukri does this in the extreme. I don't have a kukri down here right now, but the kukri does this in extreme. When you hold the handle of the kukri, the blade's right here, right? So when you get to the end of your chop, it's already cut way deep into the object you're going into. So kukri is the extreme version. This is, you know, a fifth of that, but it's still a greater advantage compared to something like a totally straight Bowie. You just naturally are going to have a deeper cut, deeper penetrating cut because your blade is angled into the material, relative to the handle. Because it's not a curved blade, right? But relative to the handle, and your entire world is oriented to the handle because that's what you're grabbing onto. Relative to the handle, the blade is forward of the handle. So bam, deeper chop. Well, let's get a load of this sheath. Guys, I love this sheath. I mean, just look at the stitching. It's straight, it's deep in there. The color of it just looks good. It works with the lanyard, with the blade. Really happy with the sheath. So it's made out of that 8 to 10 ounce veg tan leather. And as I always say, it's just cut out by hand. It's obviously there's no form for this because the blade is custom made. So this is all double stitched through here. That's done by hand. And you can see there's a welt through there. Super nice and smooth, very comfortable, chamfered, oiled nicely. Standard belt sheath, right? Well, a little bit. So a couple things you'll notice differently. First of all, I'm comparing with the Trailmaster because these things are pretty expensive, especially if you give them the San Mai 3 for like $500. and this isn't too much more than 500 bucks. So kind of similar price range, but of course this is a full-on, full-blown custom Bowie, and so it has a little more panache to it, and I'm comparing it to show you. The leather is one of those things. So what do you notice differently here? This one comes across the front, this one here comes across the back. When I open the Trailmaster and I bring it out, I will cut my retention thing here, and I've been cutting it for years. It's never cut through, but you can see it just kind of eats it away. Especially, actually that's probably more resheathing than anything else. Now, with that stitching, I don't know guys, it's not quite as good. Not quite as good as that. Anyway, when you take your Rooster Bowie there, there's no chance of your blade hitting it because it's on the opposite side. So, no issue with that. Now, you might not always want to have that retention there. You might want to be able to get your knife out faster. You might not want this flopping around. If I'm out camping and I've got this knife, which I would totally do because I would use it for chopping and batoning and getting the fire set up and all that fun stuff. If I was out there, I wouldn't want to be continually toggling this on and off, on and off. So what we have here, off, swivel, and just put it back there. Now you don't have to worry about it. You can just go with this, take your knife on and off like that, and the retention is good enough to where it's really not going to fall out like this. So I can hold this upside down. You can't really see it, but it's not falling out. So that is why we also have a snap on the back. You can go either way you want to with this. Let me show it to you on the belt just so you can see the whole Rambo package here. There's how it lies on the belt, just like this. So, not too noticeable from the front. I mean, this is not a concealed carry thing, although you absolutely could. And I'll show you how if you want to see. Clip, draw, nice, put back. I'm around camp. I don't want to have that thing flapping in the way. Clip back there, and now I'm free to go. I can draw this, my finger there, do my fine cutting on my Sharpie or whatever I'm cutting, steak, whatever, little chopping, throw it back in, good to go. And like I said, this is not Kydex retention, but this retention is pretty good. Not falling out. So I could shake it free, I'm sure, but there's some good tension in there, and largely that tension is due to our hand peened copper rivet right there. Puts a little tension there, and I also wet formed it just a bit right there. See that? That little curve there is wet formed to the handle. So it sticks in here. I feel a little weird talking my belt undone. I'll just do that. Now I feel a lot better. So that's also just a little detail right there. There you go. That is it for part one of the Rooster Bowie. Stay tuned for part two where I take this thing out in the woods and put it through some tests. Really hope you enjoyed it. And if you wanted to get one of these, this one sold for $650. And I don't know, I guess I could sell another one for that. They probably won't stay that price for long though. That is for a full-on hand-forged custom-made Bowie. That's not super expensive. Usually you're gonna be paying $1,000 for a custom-made Bowie of this size and quality. But there you have it. Subscribe to my channel if you would, if you like this sort of thing. See more Bowie knives, ask questions, talk about it. Say you love it, say that you hate it, whatever you'd like to say, I'll respond in the comments below. If you've got a Bagwell or some other super cool legendary Bowie, if you've got a Randall, please chime in, give your opinion. I'm gonna give you extra clout if you have one of those knives, because that means you pretty much know what you're talking about for sure. Or Laredo Bowie, Trailmaster. Bowie guys love Bowies, so I hope some Bowie guys stumble across this video and get to take a look. MarsFireForge.com was where you could buy one of these. You can put in a custom order. You could say, hey, I want the Rooster Bowie, or you could say, I want a different Bowie. Let's do it custom. And I'd say, all right, let's talk about it. You can get a hold of me at marsfireforge@gmail.com. I also have an Instagram at marsfireforge. Thank you all for watching. Tune in for the next in-field review of the Rooster Bowie.